We are starting off with a keynote on technology, and I will request Mr. Biswajit Das, Head Data and AI, AWS India and SOC, to kindly come over and take on the stage. Please put your hands together for Mr. Biswajit Das, Head Data and AI, AWS India and SOC, as he comes on stage to deliver his technology keynote. It's going to be very interesting.
Hey, good morning. Is it afternoon? Just about good afternoon. This is the only city where I can come up on stage and say, hi, my name is Biswajit Das, because nowhere else do people really understand that. So thank you so much. I love coming back to the city. But you've caught me on a bad day. I've got a head cold, and I'm not thinking straight. And obviously, you know, if you find me not as articulate as you would want, you know who to blame this, right? But thank you for having me here. I think this is one of the best gathering of tech folks in the east of India that happens every year. It's almost like a tech folks pilgrimage, right? One of the things you'll find Amazonians do is when we come up on stage and introduce ourselves, we tell you something a little peculiar about ourselves, right? So here goes mine. So I started my career as a bartender, as a full-time bartender. I am not engineer, I'm not a business graduate. That's my only formal education, right? So that immediately makes me the most undereducated person in the room. So you should take some, confidence out of that. So I keep getting asked this question saying, Biswa, from a bartender to the head of data and AI business for AWS, ये कौन सा दिवाली लॉटरी खरीदा था आपने जिसमें आपका ये निकला? To the extent that it almost became an existential question for me. So if you have ever had the misfortune to hear me speak before, this is something that I keep banging on about, I think data being the genesis of all innovation. And while I was doing a little research on this is what I found, right? Any idea what this is? Anyone? Don't worry, it's not a fair question. It's obviously a tablet. But this is said to be the first known recorded data in human history. This somewhere from 1400, 1500 BC in what is now southern Iraq, Mesopotamia, right? Southern Iraq. And like every priceless historical object, if you want to see it today, you'll have to go to the British Museum in London, which is where it is. But what's interesting is, what is this a record of, right? So this is actually a record of the amount of wine given out to laborers. And that's when I figured, alcohol and data has been fueling innovation for centuries, and serendipitously I ended up at the right place doing what I do for a living, right? But innovation is a very bandied around word, Everybody talks about it, often misused. But if I asked you to close your eyes and visualize innovation, more often than not, this is what you think of, right? This one shiny Eureka spark moment where you had this life-changing idea which is going to be God's gift to humankind. But actually, if you zoomed in, this is what innovation looks like. It's that one moment where you connect these hundreds and thousands and millions of dots in your head. These data points come from experience, education, nature, nurture, even from genetic memory, right? And why we are able to do this is because the human brain is just this amazing pattern matching machine, right? And everything that we do at AWS Data and AI is to enable organization and enterprises such as yourselves to be able to behave like a human brain. And at the forefront of this, very obviously, is AI. And oh my God, isn't everybody talking about it? Is there anybody in the room who doesn't have a mandate to do something with AI? Is like, man, nahi karega AI. Aisa, anybody in the room? Just doesn't happen, right? And don't believe me, this is a brilliant website. You should go and see this. This is OECD. They track AI news as it is happening in real time. There's obviously a screen grab focused on India. You can zoom out, zoom in, etc. The rate at which people are talking about AI is just mind-boggling, right? And therefore, each board has this mandate of saying we need to do something with AI, right? But what I thought today when I was invited by Shubhama and INFOCOM to come and talk about here is, you don't need me to tell you about what AI or Gen AI can do. You can internet search that thing, right? It'll give you better information than I can. I'm a human being, right? I thought, why don't I answer questions that I generally get when I'm on stage? Maybe that would be of more use. So one of the questions is, and I speak to a lot of my CIO friends, and they keep telling me, there's this thing that I call the pilot purgatory. You go to anyone and they say, hey, listen, I'm doing 8 POCs on AI and Gen AI. And then 3 months later, ask them, how many went to production? The answer generally is none, right? And therefore, the idea is, from our experience, where have we seen this being done successfully, right? So I'm going to try and break this down and from what we have seen from our experience. I think the first place where this is really working well in Gen AI is when we use it to enhance experience. It can be internal, it can be directly to your end customers, etc. For example, how many travelers in the house? Have you used Condé Nast before? So I remember when I was young and me and my wife would travel to a new country, a new place, we would carry this thick book which would have underlined places of things to do, places to see, right? Obviously the young folks in the room have no clue what I'm talking about, but it used to exist. There used to be this Condé Nast guidebook, right? And they had years and years of experience of figuring out where all of these offbeat, beautiful travel experiences were. So what they did is they put it all together and gave it in the hands of their customers, who could ask the app to create offbeat travel experience for themselves. Otherwise, you would have spent hours doing internet research, or if you're lazy like me, you would have just outsourced it to a travel agency, right? And therefore, the experience, the joy of discovering your own itinerary just is brilliant. And if you're a traveler, you'll know half the joy is in figuring out what you're going to do on your next vacation, right? The other place that we see a lot of, exponential gain coming out is efficiency. And I know nobody likes to talk about it, right? This is the non-glamorous part of technology. I mean, what efficiency? But I mean, let me give you an instance. Anyone heard of Intuit? If you've ever worked in the US market, I mean, Intuit is the platform for tax for everyone, right? So what they did this year is they put together the years of tax knowledge together. And during tax season, all their customers, whether they are institutions or whether they are individual customers, they could ask it questions regarding saying, hey, what was my tax position last year? Why do my return seems higher, lower, etc., etc., and it give them answers. Now you would think this is a no-brainer. What's the big deal about it? This year's tax season, Intuit saved 380,000 hours of call center time. If anybody here is in the BPO, KPO industry, do the math. 380,000 hours by the dollar number for each minute, each hour. That's a massive amount of saving, number one. It is also a beautiful experience for customers to not have to call up, wait in queue, ask questions that might not be answered, etc., etc. So self-service, right? It worked brilliantly well. The third place where we see a lot of stuff happening is what if this will work, yes, what I have very unsuccessfully, because I wanted 3 E's there, so I've called it experimental, but what I meant was things that we have never done before, right? Let me think of someone. Look up this company. They have this beautiful model called ESM2, right? They created the first artificial fluorescent protein known to mankind. It's more than 50%, it mimics more than 50% of what's found in nature. You know what the amazing thing is though? That if we had let Mother Nature take its own route to evolving this protein from scratch, it would have taken 500 million years. Just take a moment to grasp that number. 500 million years for it to naturally evolve. And these are things we could have never imagined doing if it wasn't for AI and Gen AI, right? So if you're looking at a use case, if they fit into one of these three, if they fit into your business plan, that's where you should really go to, I think. The other question that I'm constantly asked is, where do I start with my Gen AI strategy? Do you have a Gen AI strategy? Is it largely my board says you need to do something in Gen AI and therefore can I build a chatbot? So I think this is one of those technologies where the question is not whether it's going to really take off. It is going to take off. Believe me, I spent years doing technology. I've never seen such a compressed innovation cycle in my entire life. It's going to change a lot of how we work, what we do, etc., right? But I think the first point for an organization, for their strategy, should be to figure out where they sit on this entire value chain, right? So imagine an inverted pyramid, and this is where I should have had a snazzy infograph showing an inverted pyramid, but I'm a lazy slide maker, so forgive me. So think of an inverted pyramid. At the very, very top layer are organizations who will use Gen AI embedded into applications and systems that they already use. So you use, let's say you use your CRM systems, you use your Marcom systems, you use your distribution network systems, ERP systems, etc. And they will embed Gen AI into those applications. So you really don't need to bother what LLM, what infrastructure, what model, etc. Right? They will do it. You will just do the end use of that, consumers of that, right? Just below that will be organizations who will, and I hate this word, but I dislike this word, but let's say for want of something better, who will use prompt engineering to figure out outputs for themselves, who will ask the right questions to get the right answers, right? Just below that will be organizations who will say, hey, listen, but I have a very typical data set in my industry, my business, and therefore I need contextual answers from my organization, my industry. And then they will use various techniques such as RAG, vectoring, etc., to be able to get contextual answers from the data. Just below that will be organizations who say, this model almost works for me. Can I just tweak bits and pieces of it to make it more relevant? And at the very end of that inverted pyramid will be this very small set of organizations who will say, I'll create my own foundation model. Now, this entire thing is inversely proportionate to time, effort, and money. The lower you go in the pyramid, the more time, more effort, and more money you need to spend. The moment you figure out, and you'll probably overlap between 2 or 3 layers, where are you as an organization really going to work? And it also decides what sort of talent you need to acquire, what sort of platforms you need to work with, right? And therefore, then what sort of modernization of your data estate that you need to do. The third question that I'm constantly asked is this, right? Saying, anybody has an answer to this question? Anybody wants to take a punt at this, saying which is the best foundational model, which is the best LLM? This is a technical question, it deserves a technical answer, right? So have you heard of this beautiful principle called intransitive superiority? Don't worry, I'm glad if you haven't heard, good, you haven't wasted geeky time on figuring this out. But a beautiful example of intransitive superiority in technical terms is rock, paper, scissors, right? In linear thinking, if A is better than B and B is better than C, then A is better than C. Is that what happens in rock, paper, scissors? It doesn't, right? And therefore, it's the same with foundational models. The foundational model which is right for one use case might not be right for the second use case. So use horses for courses. And if you are going big bang on Gen AI, one of the fundamental principles of a design should be the ability to swap out models at some point of time in its lifetime. Because believe me, 2 months, 4 months, 6 months down the line, there is going to be another model which will be faster, cheaper, better. And you'll rue the day that you didn't put that into a design element, right? The clock shows me 5 minutes, and I'm going to just run through all of this. So I know that, AI, everybody wants to build this beautiful looking AI applications, but if you actually looked under it, right, there's a whole lot of foundational work that is necessary to actually deploy this in production. If you don't have any of this, it is the pilot purgatory that you're looking at. Nothing happens. Let me take some example from human technology which changed, let's say an internal combustion engine, right? It changed the way humankind transports itself. Have you ever seen somebody buy an internal combustion engine, get up on it and drive away? Has that ever happened? Somebody needed to build the chassis, the carburetor, the radiator. Come on, somebody needed to build the windshield wiper and the air conditioning and the seats, right? And therefore, it is important that we create the large ecosystem that enables us to do AI at scale, because otherwise we are going to be left with a couple of POCs, maybe 1 or 2 small use cases, nothing at scale, right? I'm going to come back to something personal. I have huge imposter syndrome. Almost every day, at some point of time, I think, do I really deserve to be here? Aren't there so many better people to do this for a living than me, right? And then I also think, whatever I'm doing for a living, does it really impact anybody at all? I mean, obviously, I'm not delusional. I know that I'm not looking for the cure to cancer, right? I'm pushing buttons. But does it really impact anybody at all? And this is our mission in India, right? We say we are empowering builders and organizations to build a better India. And we've been around for a while. So one fine day I sat and I thought, I'm an average Indian. Can I look at one day in my life and figure out if anything that me, my team, my organization has done, does it really make any difference to anybody's life? And here is what I found out, right? When I'm woken up by Alexa to the first bowl of cereal that I have, very obviously I don't go to the gym, but if I did, the clothes I'd wear, and when I'd go to do my workout, where I get my news, whether it's in English, in vernacular, and I fortunately don't have to shave every day, but if I did, the blade that I'd use, right? And when I do any of it, there is an AWS data and AI customer who actually touches my life. And then when I go to office, if you're like me, if you are at an airport every day, and who hasn't used, if you haven't used Digiyatra, you should. It's one of the best things I have seen in air transport globally. It's probably not there anywhere in the world, right? Or maybe you take a train, maybe I take a train, get a ride-hail car, right? Drive myself, and even the tires that drive my car, right? And when I do any of this, there is an AWS data and AI customer who actually touches my life, right? And then I get to office, whether it's my CRM systems, whether it's my marketing systems, whether it's my accounting systems, and so many of these other applications that you and I both use in office. And when I'm doing any of that, there is one of my customers who actually touches my life. And then when you take that small break in the middle of the day, from the food that you order to how you pay for it, sneak in that chai cigarette break, do some tax work, do some bank work. And when I do any of that again, right, I suddenly find that I have an AWS data and AI customer who actually touches my life. And then when I go back home in the evening, if you're like me, you'd like to put your legs up, get a drink. And if you're getting a drink, you want some chakna with it. So, Calcutta's own Haldiram, right? Maybe Netflix and chill. And why just Netflix and chill? Go crazy on all the streaming services there. Maybe plan the next, help your kids with their coursework, right? Plan your next vacation. Book a ticket for the next day's cricket match. Play fantasy cricket. Or when, like me, when it's my turn to cook, just order food, right? And when you do any of that, there is obviously an AWS data and AI customer who touches my life. And then when I wind down for the evening, have that last medicine delivered to me, read a little, hear a little soundscape to drift me off to sleep in that wonderfully soft mattress. So from dawn till I go to sleep, almost every moment of my life, there is an AWS data and AI customer who actually touches my life, right? And why am I telling you all this? I keep saying, only doing is doing. But the next best thing is when we see our peers, our colleagues, our friends in this country do all of this in data and AI, we know that this is not a science fiction future that we are talking about, right? And it gives you tremendous power of conviction to be able to go out and experiment. Because believe me, like I said, it's not science fiction. The future right now is where we build, right? Thank you so much. I love myself. It just blinked into zero. I finished on time. You've been a great, patient audience. I love coming to your city. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Biswajit Das. May I request you to stay on stage, please? And I will request Mr. Shubhamoy Chakraborty to kindly come on stage. Mr. Shubhamoy is the CTO of ABP Private Limited and Joint Secretary INFOCOM. We'd like to thank you, Mr. Biswajit Das, for this very, very interesting session. Thank you, sir. We request you to take your seat in the hall.